I never imagined that a BET could lead to a heartbreaking truth on my wedding night. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The church was filled with laughter and warmth. The air buzzed with excitement, but my heart pounded with dread. Was this really happening? My wedding day, my perfect day, turned into a ticking time bomb. I could feel the tightening knot in my stomach. Every step down the aisle felt heavier, like I was dragging fate behind me, a shadow lurking, whispering secrets I wasn't ready to hear. Mark stood there, handsome and glowing, waiting for me. The twinkle in his eyes was enough to make me forget the world. Had always believed in magic and fairy tales. I used to think that was enough. Little did I know, in the chaos of white lace and flowers, something sinister lay beneath the surface. I closed my eyes, breathed in the scent of roses, the smell of happiness. But was it real? I remembered our first date, the soft music playing beneath the canopy of twinkling lights. I laughed at his silly jokes, felt the warmth of his hand, the softness of his touch. We made a ridiculous bet that night over a game of darts. The loser would make dinner for a month. I won, but we both lost something bigger. A careless bet that spiraled. Who knew that vow would hold so much weight? As the ceremony unfolded, my mind drifted. I saw Aunt Betty in the front row, her eyes wide with excitement. Uncle Joe chuckled, reminiscing about his own wedding mishap. The priest spoke, his voice like a distant hum. "Do you take this man?" Just words in the wind, swirling around me, but then it hit. The door burst open. A gust of cold air swept through, silencing the crowd. My heart raced. A figure entered, draped in shadows. I couldn't see who it was, but my chest tightened. The whispers began, people shifting uneasily in their seats. My eyes widened as the stranger took a few careful steps closer. What did they know? My hands trembled. It felt like time slowed. The priest's voice faded into the background. To love and to cherish. I locked eyes with Mark. His face was a mask of confusion. "Is everything okay?" he whispered, desperate. But how could I answer? The stranger's voice cut through the silence like glass. "You don't know the whole truth about your fiancé." Gasps erupted. The air felt like ice. My heart dropped. Every face turned toward me, expectation hanging heavy. A doubt flickered. My mind raced, the wedding ring on my finger felt suddenly suffocating. What truth? Was it about the bet? My palms grew clammy. "Wait!" I shouted, fear racing through me. "What do you mean?" And then there was silence, a chilling pause that felt like it lasted an eternity. My wedding night, my lifelong dream, shattered in an instant. What truth awaited me? Who was this stranger, and what did they know? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The gasp from the congregation hung in the air like a dense fog, wrapping around me and squeezing the breath from my lungs. I could see Mark's face draining of color, confusion twisting into worry. The stranger stepped forward, the light spilling over their silhouette, revealing a woman. My heart raced as I sought a hint of recognition, but her features were foreign. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice trembling yet resolute, fighting against the quaking fear within. "What do you mean I don't know the truth about Mark?" The woman looked between the guests, her expression a mix of pity and resolve. "You deserve to know, especially on a day like today," she said, her words saturated with emotion. "I can't allow this to happen without speaking up." "It's not right," the murmurs from the crowd began again, a swell of speculation and intrigue that pierced through my spiraling thoughts. Yet in that moment of chaos, my world felt monochrome, stark against my uncertainty. I searched for refuge in Mark's eyes. They held a mixture of fear and a flicker of something else, guilt. I couldn't discern. Tell me, I said, desperation fraying my tone. What do you know? Your fiancé's past isn't what you think, she said, each word rolling off her tongue like heavy rain. He's been keeping secrets. Secrets that could change everything. You need to know if you're going to spend a lifetime with him. The shadows of unsettling scenarios clouded my thoughts. I thought of our shared laughter, our dreams entwined in bright imaginings of the future. Was it all built on lies? What kind of secrets? I pressed, my heart pounding louder than the vague whispers around me. Before she could answer, Mark stepped forward, breaking through the tumult. Stop! He shouted, his voice echoing against the high ceilings of the church. This isn't the time or place for this. Then when? The woman challenged, her expression unwavering. Will you let her pledge herself to you without knowing who you really are? He opened his mouth to speak, but the words eluded him. The crowd watched in rapt attention, and suddenly I felt as though I were adrift in a sea of eyes, scrutinizing the sinking ship that was my wedding. Mark, tell me the truth. The desperation in my voice made it shake. What is she talking about? He hesitated, his eyes darting between me and the woman, now an embodiment of our stormy night. I reached for his hand, seeking comfort, but he flinched, pulling away as if my touch burned him. With a shattered breath, he finally admitted, there are things from my past, things I thought were buried. Like what? I yelled, the words punctuated by a wave of betrayal that washed over me. What could possibly be so terrible? 10 years ago, I was involved in something I regret deeply, he confessed, tension vibrating through his voice. I made mistakes that came back to haunt me. I thought they were behind me. A buzzing electricity filled the room. Panic surged like wild waves, crashing each fragile thought together. What sort of mistakes? I felt like I was spiraling through memories. Our first shared meal, the warmth of his hand in mine, each one now tainted with doubt. There was an accident. His voice broke under the weight of his own words. A friend of mine died because of something I did. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to ruin the happiness we built. That I staggered back as realization washed over me. The confessions had turned my world on its head, warping every cherished moment into one tinged with shadows. An accident? A lost friend? How could I reconcile the man I loved with this revelation, drowning me in disillusionment? The shadows of uncertainty crept in, but the woman's presence still loomed, her eyes forcing me to confront the tangled mess of emotions within. What did she know about his past? Did she hold more weight to the truth than he had ever shared? What else do you know? I asked the woman, feeling the walls closing in. What else is there? She hesitated, glancing at Mark, the tension electric between them. You need to understand, Mark isn't the only one entangled in this. There are others who want him to pay for what happened. The air thickened, and Mark's eyes widened in horror. No, you can't. But before he could complete the thought, she turned to me, her voice urgent. There's someone watching him. Someone who hasn't forgotten. The churning uncertainty settled deep into my bones. An unseen figure, a lurking danger, veiled behind the veil of our vows, and behind it all, a hidden tragedy that could unravel everything we built. That my heart raced in anticipation, anchored somewhere between a deep-rooted love and a consuming fear. There was so much to uncover, so many unspoken truths still out there, waiting to fracture what remained of our fragile reality, and as I stood at the precipice of love and fear, the silence of the church now echoed with questions, uncertainty, and a burgeoning dread. What lay ahead for us both? Could love withstand the shadows creeping in? I looked at Mark, searching for answers, but all I found was the pallor of his face, and the revelation of an uncertain future looming just beyond the horizon. I stood there, suspended between the weight of Mark's confession and the piercing gaze of the mysterious woman who had intruded upon what was meant to be one of the happiest days of my life. The entire room felt like a slow-motion carousel, spinning wildly, with me at its center, clutching at the fragile threads of my reality. That I need to get out of here, I whispered more to myself than to anyone else. My hands trembled as I sought the familiar comfort of Mark's presence, but he still seemed trapped in a world of his hurt and regret, dwelling on the ghost of a past he couldn't quite escape. That I am so sorry, he murmured, his voice barely audible, yet it echoed painfully in the silence that lingered. He took a step toward me, but I instinctively recoiled, needing space to breathe, to think, even as I felt the heartache of our distance grow. Did I ask this true? I asked, looking from Mark to the stranger, who stood resolute, fear and compassion intertwined on her face. What does it mean that there are others? What does it mean for us? The past has a way of clawing its way back, she said softly, stepping closer, her demeanor shifting from confrontational to sympathetic. People don't always forgive, and there are some who may want restitution for what happened. That accident took a life, and those left behind might not be content with just your fiancé's remorse. Don't listen to her, Mark interjected, his voice rising with urgency, filled with desperation. I can handle this. I will handle this. You don't need to, but I do, I interrupted, feeling a crack form in my heart, where love and betrayal wrestled for dominance. You've kept the truth from me, Mark. How can I believe that this will just go away because you want it to? In that moment, fear punched through me, sharper than any words I could speak. I glimpsed a future veiled in uncertainty, each imagined night filled with sleepless worry that perhaps the shadows of his past would one day catch up to us, to obliterate the peace we had nearly grasped. The ambient noise of hushed whispers grew louder, a living thing pressing against me as if to suffocate the truth. I caught sight of the congregation shifting in their seats, eyes darting from me to Mark, their whispers weaving a tapestry of gossip and speculation around the girl who was supposed to be a bride but stood instead at the confluence of chaos. That I am still here, Mark pleaded, the raw vulnerability in his tone softening me just a fraction. I love you, and I want to fight for us. We can find a way through this. Can you really? My voice broke, hitting a raw nerve that reverberated through my chest. The love I felt for him was overshadowed by the fear that loomed ever larger. Can we really navigate this together when I feel like I don't even know you? The woman stepped closer, gently placing a hand on my forearm, a gesture of solidarity that sent a tingle across my skin. It's okay to be scared, it's okay to feel lost. But knowing what's lurking beneath the surface will help both of you confront it. Ignorance won't shield you from the truth. Mark's eyes darted from mine to hers, and for a fleeting moment, I believed that he was also grappling with the troubling implications of her words. The bitterness of uncertainty coagulated in the air between us. Tell me everything, I finally said, addressing both of them, feeling my heart race as I steeled myself for whatever that might entail. If we're going to move forward, I need to understand all of this. I need to know what we're facing. The woman nodded, as if she had anticipated this moment, and I wondered how long she had been waiting for the right time to unveil the truth. There are people connected to that accident, people who still mourn, who believe justice needs to be served. I don't know their intentions, but they won't simply let it go. You're tied to this now, whether you like it or not. That I thought we were past that, Mark murmured, a flicker of anger coursing through the fear etched on his face. Why drag up the past now? It is settled. It has to be. That's the thing, isn't it? A new voice interrupted, the rich baritone flooding the air with a sharpness that conjured a chill. My heart plummeted as I turned to see a man stepping into the light, a presence as heavy as a gathering storm. Something about him was familiar, as if a piece of my life had been nudged from a shadow. Mark's past isn't settled, not yet. And it won't be until blood is paid for blood. The words dripped with a malice that was almost palpable, sending shivers down my spine. Instantly, the room erupted in chaos, gasps punctuating the air as the congregation scrambled to absorb the implications of the stranger's intrusion. The world around me was a blur, marked by both the lies that had woven through our love and the ugly truths that threatened to tear it apart. Tugging at my grasp of reality, a sense of vulnerability washed over me as realization sank in. The man's words held a weight I didn't fully comprehend, one that threatened to unleash a flood of consequences. In that moment, I felt small, lost in a world that twisted around us with every breath. I glanced at Mark, whose face was a mask of confusion mixed with terror. I had no idea what lay ahead or what was waiting just outside the theater of our lives. As the world darkened around me, my heart pounded out a question whispered on the winds of uncertainty. Had love sealed our fate, or had it merely placed us in the path of a storm that would irrevocably change everything? Mark's body stiffened beside me, an atomic weight tugging at his shoulders as the reality of the stranger's words settled over us like frost. I stood frozen, my fingers feeling numb against the warmth of the intimate fabric of my wedding dress, now a shroud of hesitant dreams shattered by the echoes of past sins. Who are you? Mark finally demanded, his voice hoarse, as though the air he breathed had become a toxic mix of anger and despair. The man who had interrupted took a bold step forward, his presence commanding the room's attention. Like a tempest ready to explode. "They call me Dean," he said, his eyes boring into Mark's with an unsettling intensity that felt as if they were peeling back layers of past transgressions. "But you know me better than that. You remember my brother, don't you?" Time stretched, a taut string ready to snap between the tension mounting in the room. For a heartbeat, Mark's expression transformed, flickering with recognition, mired in a tangled web of emotions. I looked between them, the distance I felt not just physical, but a chasm of unknown histories that unnecessary silence wrapped around like stale air. "Your brother, he died in that accident," Mark finally uttered, and grief carved deeper lines in his face. A young man's face, once bright and promising, now shadowed by the implications of old ghosts rising anew. "I had no idea you were connected to him." Dean's smile was a sharp blade, dangerously deceiving. "No, of course you didn't. You were too busy living your life. But the rest of us hosts left to pick up the pieceway, remember, and we grieve." His gaze swept across the congregation, who stood absorbed in the spectacle, no longer merely spectators of what should have been my wedding but witnesses to an impending reckoning. "Mark," I said, my voice steadying through the tremors of shock. I could feel confusion warping into something more incisive and demanding. "You were never just the victim here, were you? There are consequences. And now they're surfacing in ways we never anticipated." Mark's fists clenched, and yet the vulnerability in his eyes softened only by the edges of desperation. I tried to move on. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." "I thought you thought what?" Dean cut him off, his tone laced with incredulity. "That your past would simply vanish if you ignored it long enough? That you could start anew without addressing what you'd done? I didn't know it would follow me." Mark's voice broke, cracking under the strain of emotions spilling out like prayers left unspoken. Dean stepped back, letting silence hang between us, heavy and suffocating, the air thick with unuttered fears. I searched Mark's eyes, looking for the version of him I loved, the man who had held me through sleepless nights and whispered promises of eternity. And yet, shadowed doubts flickered in the brightness of our shared moments, reminding me how fragile that love had always been. "Just listen," I whispered, hoping to pull us back from the edge of an emotional cliff. "We need to understand. Tell us everything, Mark, how it happened. What really went down that night." Grim acceptance washed over Mark's face as he took a step toward me, and a flash of understanding ignited in his eyes, a recognition that we were both standing at a crossroads, one where honesty could either bind us together or fracture our already tenuous connection beyond repair. "The accident was my fault," he began, each word a fall into deep water, "but I didn't cause it in the way Dean might want you to believe. I was the one driving the car. Yes, I was there, but it wasn't intentional." His voice broke, trembling on the precipice of his truth. "We were young, reckless. It all spiraled out of control within seconds. Hatch and I were racing, and I lost control. It wasn't supposed to end that way." Hatch, the name landed like a stone, conjuring unfamiliar feelings within the chambers of my heart. I hadn't known of him, hadn't known why I had become a symbol of loss for another family, why I now stood cradling the past Mark had hidden like a secret shame. And his family, I prodded gently. Needing the entire picture, wanting to understand the shadows that floundered just outside our light. "They want justice," Mark replied, sadness causing his voice to tremor. "But they also want closure. I've spent years trying to bury what happened, hoping it wouldn't haunt me. But Dean is right. I can't just ignore it. None of us can." As the truth hung like heavy fog, uncertainty wrapped itself tight around my chest. I felt small, like a child stripped of all that was sacred, each revelation becoming a new scar etched into our story. Yet through the wreckage of his past, there was a flicker of hope, igniting a path forward, one where we could reclaim our love from the ashes of an old life. "Can you confront them, Mark? Can we fight for our love?" The question leaped from my heart to my lips, desperate for reassurance, knowing full well that it was asking for something monumental to emerge from the devastation that I want to. He answered, and I believed him, my heart struggling to hold on to hope amidst trepidation. "But I'm afraid. What if they don't want to hear me? What if my past defines me now?" Dean scoffed, crossing his arms, and I felt the tension shift again. "What if I decide to take matters into my own hands?" The chill in his voice raised alarms, and instinctively, my body tensed against the potential weight of violence born out of grief. What do you mean? I bit back, my heart racing at the thought of Mark in harm's way or, worse, something irreversible happening due to this interwoven destiny. You don't get to hide anymore, Dean said, his eyes steel. We had a debt settled with the law, but the heart isn't satisfied with legal boundaries. Justice won't sleep until it's fulfilled. You need to prepare yourselves. I won't stand idly by while you two waltz away from the mess you've made. Darkness loomed closer, tightening its grip around our fragile future, as I silently braced for the storm's unyielding winds. I gripped Mark's hand tightly, feeling both the warmth of his love and the impending storm that threatened to tear us apart. In that very moment, I understood that all we had now were whispers of hope in the ever-thickening air of uncertainty. What version of justice would they demand? How far would it go? As our lives hung perilously in the balance, those unanswered questions loomed larger than ever before, inviting dread and compelling me to stand resolute against the encroaching shadows. The room pulsed with unspoken thoughts, a silent thrum of echoes, the murmurs of guests who had come to celebrate, now hushed witnesses clutching their drinks, as if afraid to sip in the fear that it would shatter the tension hanging overhead. Mark's grip tightened on my hand, the warmth seeping through a thin veneer of uncertainty painted upon his features. Each breath felt like a battle, stifled by the raw emotion coursing around us. That we need to get out of here, I murmured, urging Mark to move, to escape this suffocating atmosphere where honesty was wrestling despair for dominance. Yet, before I could finish my thought, Dean stepped forward, as if a predator unleashing its defenses. Running won't help. You know that as well as I do. His voice dripped with resolve, masking sorrow with a fierce edge. You've been living in a fantasy. Your past isn't going to disappear just because you want it to. A chill slithered down my spine, and I felt Mark's body tense beside me. We're not running from anything, Mark shot back, his anger flaring for the first time since the confrontation began. We just need time to talk this through. Process, time? Dean scoffed, a melodic whip cracking through the stillness. What you need is to confront your demons. Not just me, but the family left to grieve a brother you killed. You think that's something you can just explain away? I could see the unraveling of Mark's resolve, the mounting pressure dulling the brightness of the love he carried for me. I'm sorry, Dean. I never wanted to hurt anyone, he replied, voice lowering to gravel. But I can't keep paying for a mistake from years ago or let it define who I am now. The guests stirred restlessly, their eyes darting between us, caught in a frangible thread of a moment hovering on the precipice of chaos. Distressed whimpers interrupted the uncomfortable energy. A child stood just beyond the sanctuary doors, momentarily a bright figure in a field of gray, her small hands clutching a plush toy. The innocence in her gaze cut through the emotional melee, reminding me of the fragility of life, of the unyielding hope cradled in each new generation. Look at her, I implored, gesturing toward the little girl. We owe it to her, not just our Sylvesto. Break this cycle. Dean flinched at the sight, and for a fleeting second, I saw something soften in his hard exterior. But it quickly rigidified into the unapologetic lines around his mouth. You think that little girl will change anything? I'm afraid you're mistaken. An unsettling silence drifted again, thick and heavy, barely allowing the taste of warmth or compassion to break through. However, unconsciously, my mind went to the moments I had shared with Mark, the laughter and tears, the moments when I had thought artists painted the color of our love, vibrant and true. Mark, I breathed, my voice barely above a whisper, tell me what you feel right now. No barriers, no apologies. Just your heart. That he hesitated, vulnerability flickering in his tempestuous storm of emotions as raw honesty pulled him in different directions. I feel terrified. Terrified of letting you down, of losing you. I love you, and I want to fight for us, but I don't know how. The ache in his voice bled into my heart, as real and tangible as the gown that now swirled around me, a stark reminder of what once felt like a fairy tale. Then we fight together, I pressed softly. We need a plan, Dean interjected sharply, breaking through our emotional moment. If you're going to face the consequences, you have to prepare for what they'll demand. How can you know what they'll want? I shot back, trying to hold my ground amidst the looming shadows. Every grief is different, every family's way of healing is individual. But that spark of hope I had ignited seemed shaky against the steel walls Dean had erected around himself. Trust me, Dean replied solemnly, a small, almost imperceptible crack forming in the rigidity of his demeanor. They will want something concrete. If you plan to move forward, then you'll answer for that night and face your sins head-on. A sudden flood of memories surged in my mind. Every moment that had led us to this day. Yet, beneath the weight of despair hovered a glimmer, a sense of camaraderie blossoming uncertainly in the ruins of all we held dear. I can't let you do this alone, Mark. I won't let you fall under this burden by yourself, I declared, fortified by the certainty of my feelings. What if we write to them? My words spilled, my thoughts racing like the cars Mark and Hatch once raced on that fateful night. Reach out. Make your intentions known. Show them you're willing to take responsibility. Dean's expression clouded further. This isn't about penance. They want more than just words. Then we show up, face them together man to man, Mark proposed, his tone gaining strength with every passing syllable. I can't change the past, but I can honor it by confronting it properly. And if it leads to my redemption, then so be it. A lingering tension hung in the air, suspended between hope and despair. As Mark and Dean locked eyes in this moment, a flicker of mutual understanding blossomed, a silent agreement forged by shared pain. But before I could breathe in relief, I felt a tremor in the ground beneath us, external yet troubling. It might have just been my heart wanting to explode from the internal conflict. As I looked down, the little girl still lingered, only now her wide eyes glimmered with something else, recognition, perhaps. My heart dropped. It wasn't my imagination. Her small face turned, her lips parted as she called, Mama. As her gaze darted over toward the back of the room, I turned sharply to see a figure emerge from the shadows, a specter from the past, one I never expected to see again, a woman with an unmistakable resemblance to Mark, just as elegant and fierce. I was so afraid I couldn't draw breath, the new weight of possibility suffocating my awareness. Hatch's mother, I mouthed silently, a realization settling heavily in the silence, the reunion unexpected, raw, a confrontation simmering with countless emotions etched new lines into our story, leaving us hanging on the brink of unknown consequences. I squeezed Mark's hand tighter, feeling the burst of emotion flooding through him, his world shifting once more toward an uncertain horizon. The air crackled with the tension of unspoken words, an almost tangible weight that sat heavily on our chests. Mark's hand squeezed mine as Hatch's mother, drawn by the echoes of pain, stepped forward into the light, her expression a tapestry of heartbreak and resolve. What are you doing here? Mark's voice broke the stillness, stitched with confusion and a desperate search for clarity among the wreckage of his past. Hatch's mother's eyes bore into his, and for a moment, time felt suspended, each second a deliberate tick of fate. I had to come, she said, her voice trembling but laced with a fierce determination. I wasn't going to let this night pass without understanding why. I may have been mistaken, but the empathy that flickered behind her pain-filled eyes suggested that somewhere within the storm of her grief, a part of her yearned for reconciliation, not just retribution. Mom, please, Mark exhaled, anguish clawing at the edges of his voice. I never meant to hurt Hatch. You know that. Doi? She flinched, a bead of sorrow rolling down her cheek, shimmering like the ghost of a memory. You think that love absolves you from the consequences? That words can heal the scars left from that night. My heart sank for Mark, feeling the quake of heartbreak ripple through him. I wanted to reach out, to be the bridge that could mend what felt irreparably broken, but my presence felt so small in the shadow of such profound grief, a forgotten flower amidst a cacophony of thorns. That I am sorry, Mark whispered, his voice cracking as he continued to fight for footing amid swirling emotions. But I need you to know I'm willing to make things right, however you'll allow it. Silence enveloped us like a fog, the kind that induces both clarity and despair. Dean remained a spectral observer, eyes flickering like the flame of an unattended candle, uncertain whether to illuminate or extinguish. Hatch's mother stepped closer, and it seemed to break an invisible barrier surrounding Mark. What does that mean? She asked, softening, almost a plea for connection buried deep within her pain. What right do you think you have to decide how to make things right when my son is gone forever? My breath ceased, suffocated under the weight of her words. I felt paralyzed, as though empathy itself was leading me toward an abyss from which we might never emerge. I prayed that Mark would find the strength to respond, to navigate the jagged course between blame and understanding. That it means I need to face what happened, he said, rising to meet her gaze and revealing a clarity that had escaped him until now. If it's possible to find some way to honor Hatch's memory, then I will do it. I want to learn from Thisbe better for his sake, and for yours. What kind of honor is this? She asked, feelings intermingled with suspicion. By coming here, living your life as if nothing happened, by confronting the truth, he declared firmly, his warmth radiating through the chill that enveloped us all. I should have done this a long time ago. I'm here now not to run or hide but to stand before you with my truth. That I felt a surge of gratitude for Mark's courage, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds, a reminder of the hope that flickered like a fragile candle in the dark. Yet, behind it loomed the memory of that night, a haunting shadow that whispered of consequences we both feared we could not face. Hatch deserved a chance, his mother murmured, the haunting edge of grief weaving a spell of mourning in her eyes. And instead, my son's life was torn away. Mark took a step forward, unwavering. I know I can never bring him back, but I hope to do right by you both. Please give me that chance. The kind-heartedness of his words washed over me, mingling with the turmoil that had churned so violently since this night began. If only we could turn back time, rewind the clock and seize the opportunity to change the narrative. The only way forward leads through the ashes of the past, Dean interjected, his voice heavy but softened by the breakthrough. I hadn't anticipated the glimmer of understanding that had wormed its way into the room. But it has to be a true reckoning, Mark. Otherwise, it will crush you under its weight. One of Mark's hands trailed through his hair, the panic of uncertainty resurfacing. But how? What if the past demands more than I can give? What if it destroys us? There was a vulnerability in his words that resonated deeply, like the echoes of laughter shared across kitchen counters fading into the dusk. A small flicker of recognition flickered in Hatch's mother's eyes, and she stepped closer, a line deepening between her brows. What is it that you desire, Mark? What would make you feel whole again? I want to be a better man, he said, and I could hear the weight lifting from his chest, carried on the wings of hope. For you, for Hatch, and for myself. Just as warmth threatened to unfurl amid the intensity, an alarm blared from somewhere outside. The Venuya's stark siren slicing through the air, a reminder of the precarious present we were all existing within. Mark's gaze darted toward the source, desperation flooding his features as a truth loomed closer, a blockade against our newfound clarity. No. It can't be, he choked out. It's happening too soon. What are you talking about? I asked, adrenaline shooting through me like wildfire, confusion peppering my question. Mark turned to face me, his expression shifting from determination to near terror. I have to go. They who? But before he could respond, the venue doors flew open with a bang, and I turned to see uniformed officers stepping inside, their faces bleak and intent. A loud murmur ran through the guests, as the air thickened with a kind of dread, burying our fragile moment under a heap of uncertainty. Mark, we need to figure this out. I pleaded, but the fear in his eyes told me that reality was crashing through the fragile barrier we had briefly constructed. It felt like the ending of a beloved story before it had even begun, the kind that sent shivers down the spine, knowing that the next chapter held more secrets than solace. Hatch's mother drew a sharp breath as she absorbed the scene unfurling before us, but there was something deeper in her gaze now, a complexity of emotions intertwining. The motives of motherly love and loss weighed heavily on her heart. As the officers advanced toward us, the stakes of the night shifted entirely, drawing all of us into the storms. I once more racing toward a revelation that weaving through our destinies could deliver answers or scatter us to the winds. There were no easy paths left to tread, and certainly no guarantees. The echo of that siren rang out, a soundtrack to the unraveling truth that lay ahead. The officers advanced with an air of authority, their presence a stark contrast to the vulnerability that hung between us. Mark's face paled as he looked from me to them, panic etching deeper lines into his brow. I didn't think it would happen tonight, he said, his voice a harsh whisper, barely audible against the rising tide of commotion. What do you mean? What's going on, Mark? I pressed, my heart racing. The atmosphere around us had shifted from tense confrontation to full-blown chaos, as murmurs of dread intermingled with whispers of confusion. Guests began to stir anxiously, shifting their weight from one foot to another, casting furtive glances toward the doors. The police, Mark stammered, looking helplessly back at Hatch's mother, her face a war of emotions, fury taut against the sorrow she had fought so desperately to contain. There's something I didn't tell you. Something what could possibly be more important than this? I interrupted, but I could see the truth in his eyes, a monstrous thing itching to escape from the shadows of his past, the officers separated, 2 flanking the entrance, while 2 others approached us, their expressions serious but unreadable. One stepped forward, a man with kind but steely eyes. "Mark Harper?" he called out, and my heart dropped into my stomach at the way Mark flinched at the sound of his name. "Why yes," Mark responded, his voice unsteady, as he instinctively took a step backward, the instinct to flee battling with the urge to face whatever was looming. "We need to speak with you regarding Hatch Donnelly," the officer continued, taking another step closer, pen poised above a notepad. "We have questions that require urgent answers. No, this can't happen," Mark mumbled, panic spilling from his lips like a river overflowing its banks. "Not now." Hatch's mother latched onto the fistful of hope she had held onto throughout the night, an unyielding ember refusing to die. "You took my son's life. You have no right to run from this. You have to face the truth whatever it is," she exclaimed, tears brimming but strength unwavering. As the officer continued, Mark's face paled further. Each syllable that fell from the officer's lips felt like a dagger, cutting deeper into the web of pain and heartbreak we had been trying to untangle. "There are developments in the investigation that surround the events leading to Hatch's death, a matter of negligence that connects directly to your actions," he stated matter-of-factly. I felt the air leave my lungs, twisting in my throat as the world around us blurred into an obscured haze. Each word sliced deeper into the resolve I thought had sprung up like a wildflower between Mark and Hatch's mother. Hatch had become a casualty of something far beyond misfortune, his death forged in the quiet, insidious edges of betrayal and consequence. I wasn't negligent. I didn't. Mark began, but his voice faltered, the truth of his past and present grinding together like stones against flesh. His eyes darted between the officers and Hatch's mother. "You don't understand," he added, desperation spilling over. "Then make us understand, or else we will have no choice but to summon you for further questioning," the officer replied, unwavering, but there was a flicker of understanding in his gaze that told me this wasn't merely about process, it was about seeking the truth, however brutal it appeared. "That's not how it happened," Mark protested, shaking his head as doubt crept into his features. By this point, I could sense the shadow of despair looming over us like an ominous storm cloud. "Then tell them how it happened," I urged, my voice rising as the heat of the moment wrapped around us like an electric current, jostling our thoughts and refusing to let go. "If there are secrets that haunt you, speak them. If you believe in the truth, now is the time to let it out." With that challenge, my heart was pounding, engulfed by the gravity of what lay in the balance. Either the surge of truth would reshape our grief into something altered but recognizable, or it would descend deeper into chaos. The officer's gaze softened ever so slightly, clearly sensing the tumult roaring beneath the surface of our emotions. "Mark, for your own sake, and for the sake of those who mourn Hatch, please cooperate." Mark clenched his fists, an internal battle waged as he grappled with the demons he had long kept at bay. "He was my friend," he finally whispered, emotion breaking through like a dam bursting. "He wasn't just a name in a headline, he was real. I can't explain everything, but I didn't mean for it to happen. I never wanted to hurt him. We can't help you if you don't help us understand," the officer replied gently. "This is your chance to uncover what really happened that night." In the silence that followed, the weight of Mark's revelation pressed upon us heavily, oppressive and suffocating. I searched for courage in his eyes, but all I found was doubt, spiraling into a chasm of uncertainty that threatened to swallow him whole. Suddenly, amidst the gathering tension, Dean stepped forward. "What if there's more here than meets the eye?" His voice cut cleanly through the chaos, steady and unwavering. "What if this is about more than just guilt or innocence?" The officers turned to him, intrigued. It was as though a new path, one of revelation, had suddenly emerged, uniting hope and despair in a fragile interplay. My heart surged with curiosity, and I stole a glance at Mark, wondering if that spark of discovery was within him as well. But before he could respond, the piercing shrillness of my phone broke through the charged silence. I glanced at the screen, my heart freezing as the name appeared, an unwelcome ghost from the past demanding my attention. It was a name I never expected to see again, especially on a night fraught with such heavy consequence. "Mark, to have to take this," I stuttered, guilt washing over me quickly, as all eyes turned to me. "It might be important." As I stepped back, bracing for whatever awaited me on the other end, I could feel the room crackling with unsaid words, an incoming storm brewing on the horizon. I pressed the phone to my ear, trying to catch my breath. But deep inside, a knot twisted with uncertainty, a certainty that the next word spoken might unravel everything. Ally? You need to listen to me, the voice on the other line crackled with urgency, flooding my mind with a mix of dread and bewilderment. It's about Hatch and what he knew. My breath hitched, every ounce of my being growing tense, suspended in a state of anticipation as the revelation hung thick in the air, clutching the edges of our fragile hope, threatening to rupture the confines of our shaken world once more. The voices around me faded into a low murmur as I struggled to process the words echoing in my mind. What he knew? I repeated, disbelief twisting into confusion. My legs felt weak beneath me as I leaned against the wall for support. Ally, listen carefully. There are things you don't understand, things that were happening right before Hatch died. It's connected to something much bigger, and you need to hear this. The urgency in the caller's voice sent shivers down my spine. This was not just about grief, it was about unraveling a thread that had intertwined all our lives in unexpected ways. Who's this? I demanded, trying to regain some semblance of control. What do you know about Hatch? Just listen to me, they pressed, their voice crackling with intensity, as though the weight of their words would shatter the frail glass of reality we were all inhabiting. I can't explain everything now, but Hatch was involved with people who were dangerous. And before he died there was a pause, thick with unspoken truths. He was trying to get out. That I swallowed hard. Images of Hatch flashed in my mind like a film reel, his laughter, his warmth, the moments we'd shared. Could he have been tangled in something so sinister? And what did it mean for Mark, who stood just beyond my reach, grappling with his own demons while the specter of Hatch hovered between us like an uninvited guest? Where are you? I managed to force the question through lips that felt heavy and foreign. I can't say. You're in danger if you dig deeper, but I'll reach out again when I can. Just remember, Hatch wanted to protect you. The call ended, leaving me clutching the phone as if it were a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. I rubbed my forehead, trying to dissipate the wave of confusion crashing over me. The room's cacophony returned in waves, the police officers and the lingering guests just silhouettes against the vivid tapestry of emotions swirling around my heart. That I turned back to Mark, his eyes wide with uncertainty, fear bleeding into worry. The truth of his silence hung between us, a barrier thick with unconfessed guilt. Mark, I said softly, stepping closer, there's something we need to talk about. But before I could outline what I had just discovered, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Gene, his face a mix of concern and determination. We need to help him, he said, pointing subtly to Mark. We need to confront whatever truth he's holding on to. His voice was fierce, but there was a thread of compassion woven through it, reminding me that he had come to care for both Hatch and Mark in ways I hadn't fully grasped. Do you think he's hiding something? I asked, glancing back at Mark, who now paced restlessly, a tempest of emotions brewing beneath his surface. That we won't know until he's ready to speak the truth, Gene replied firmly. It's not a matter of guilt or innocence. It's about understanding why all of this happened and giving Hatch's memory the respect it deserves. Doubt gripped me, twisting alongside an offbeat flicker of hope. Each dropped word felt like a cannonball, exploding against the confines of my heart, but the thought of uncovering more pain was daunting. What if the truth hurts him more than it helps? Truth always hurts at first. Gene didn't flinch. But healing can only start once the wounds are laid bare. That's how honor is restored. As Gene's words sunk in, I felt a quiet courage rise within me, pushing against the walls I had built around myself in the face of loss. But then, just as I started to gather my thoughts, Mark's voice broke through the crowd, strained yet powerful. That I can't do this anymore. Those simple words resonated in the space, silencing the ongoing chaos. Everyone turned towards him, eyes glued to the storm unfolding. You think my silence is some kind of strength? It's not. It's killing me. The weight of vulnerability in his voice peeled back the layers of tension. I could see a flicker of that hidden truth battling to break free, struggling against all it had stashed away in the corners of his regret. I never meant for Hatch to be involved in any of this, he murmured, looking down at the ground as though the earth might swallow him whole. But two was with him that night before it happened. I know what went down. I can't keep running from it anymore. Then don't, I urged, stepping closer, desperation pulling at the edges of my plea. You have to tell us everything. We can't carry this burden alone. Will it make a difference? He whispered, his shoulders sagging under the weight of an unseen burden. Will it change anything? It may not change the past, I replied, leaning in so that he could hear the raw emotion in my voice, but it can illuminate the truth. Hatch deserves to be remembered for the life he led, not for how he lost it. But as Mark prepared to speak, the tension intensified and the door swung open, a gust of unnatural coldness sweeping through the room. It felt as if the universe held its breath, waiting in anticipation of something imminent. Bracing myself, I followed the shifting shadows that marched inside. My heart raced as a figure stepped forward, someone from my past I hadn't expected to see, a dark reminder that sometimes the ghosts we try to escape are the very ones meant to pull us back into the light. That I am here for a reason, the person said, their voice meeting the silence with a haunting finality. As recognition washed over me, the weight of my last phone call, the words unspoken between Mark and me, all collided into a singular moment. My heart raced, the uncertainty standing stark against the emotions that now curled into unbearable tension. That we need to talk, the stranger said, casting a knowing look at Mark that felt like a prelude to a revelation that could shatter our world once again. I gripped my phone tightly, ready to meet whatever truth awaited, knowing it would change everything. The silence in the room deepened, stretching uncomfortably as the stranger stepped fully into view. Their face was etched with a mix of determination and fear, a lantern cutting through the shadows that clung to my memories. My breath caught in my throat as recognition surged within me, a face I hadn't seen in years, someone I had thought was long gone from my life. Ren, I breathed, unwilling to believe my eyes. A rush of memories flooded over, measured laughter enveloped by late-night confessions, and the weight of a friendship that had crumbled when life took its unexpected turns. But Ren's presence here, at such a pivotal moment, was a twist I couldn't grasp. Ally, Ren's voice softened, yet the cadence carried a tremor of urgency. I didn't want to come back like this, but I had no choice. You need to hear what I have to say. Before I could respond, Jean interjected, his protective instincts flaring. You have no idea what's happening here. Why should we trust you? Because I might hold the key to everything, Ren said, their gaze shifting to Mark. And I promise, it's not what you think. The thrum of my heart quickened. Ren had been part of the same circle that had spiraled into tumult when news of Hatch's involvement with unsavory characters made its way through the grapevine. I sensed the reasoning behind their return, the sense that everything was about to unravel, needled against the fabric of our fragile lives. Mark stood frozen, white-knuckling the edge of a table. What do you know about Hatch? His voice was urgent, almost pleading, like a dam ready to burst. I sensed an impending storm behind his calm facade, each word laden with unshed tears and unspoken guilt. Ren took a deep breath, the air heavy with a mixture of regret and resolve. Hatch was trying to protect you, Ally. He got caught up in something bigger than any of us realized, and there were conversations we had that night, ones I wish I'd taken more seriously. That I could see the flickering hope in Mark's eyes shift to confusion, the currents of emotions tangled beyond recognition. What conversations? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Hatch had received threats, Ren continued, each word methodically unraveling the fabric of our belief. He was being followed, targeted by someone he refused to name. He was terrified for you, for the life you two were building. And when he finally decided to act, it was too late. A gasp escaped my lips. The idea that Hatch had been trying to protect me stung and comforted all at once. It also opened a wound that had barely begun to heal. I glanced at Mark, whose expression was a blend of anguish and confusion, struggling with the weight of revelation. But if that's true, why didn't he tell me? Mark's voice was choked with pain. I could have helped him, because he didn't want to drag you into it, Ren replied, a profound sorrow lining their voice. He thought he could handle it, that he could make everything right without you knowing. It was his way of shielding you both. A silence swept over us again, thick with the implications of each confession. I could almost feel the air crackle around us as the truth hung like an unseen specter, both suffocating and liberating. Could it be that in his striving to protect us, Hatch had placed a blindfold over the very risks that led to his demise? Ren, I said, clutching onto a tinge of hope, if Hatch tried to get out, then there has to be a way to understand who was behind this. You said you had information. Tell us everything you know. Not here, Ren replied, glancing around as if the walls themselves had ears. Too many people will see us. We need to go somewhere private. Fine, Gene agreed, steeling himself, his loyalty to our cause unwavering. But we need to be careful. If Hatch was trying to escape from dangerous people, then sticking our necks out could mean risking our safety. That I looked back at Mark, whose internal battle raged as he appeared to weigh the urgency pressed upon us by Ren's revelations against the emotional burden already placed on his shoulders. I can't lose anyone else, he uttered heavily, his vulnerability stark against the backdrop of strength I had come to know. You won't, I promised, my voice holding a tremor I wished I could control. The desperation clawed at me, unwilling to relent. Despite the looming uncertainty, there was a sense that we were on the precipice of discovering the truth that could either seal our fates or provide the key to healing. As we made our way to a more secluded corner of the venue, the wall of reality pressed around us. My heart thudded, each beat resonating with dread and the faintest glimmer of hope. Yet, just as we reached the quieter side hallway, an intense flicker of movement to my right pulled my gaze. A shadowed figure stood at the edge, watching us with narrowed eyes, their presence slicing through the air like a knife through warm butter. My stomach sank as recognition kicked in. A person from my past I had never anticipated encountering again, someone who filled my mind with questions and doubts I had yet to confront. Ally, they said, their voice laced with intention. We need to talk. Now, the knot in my chest tightened, doubt flooding back as all around me spun at the revelation of this new player in our already complex game. Would they bring clarity, or would they further embroil us in a narrative woven with darkness? Today had already upended the truth. I had a sinking feeling tonight was far from over, and the path ahead was riddled with pitfalls no one saw coming. The air crackled with tension as I stood by the figure, the weight of recognition settling within me like a stone dropped into still waters. Cam. My voice faltered, uncertainty twisting around my thoughts. I hadn't seen him in years. Our shared history, once punctuated by laughter and dreams, had devolved into that awkward silence of distance mixed with the bittersweet memories of a friendship unraveled. Ally, he replied, his gaze piercing, a dangerous mix of urgency and familiarity. We don't have much time. His words sliced through the chaos, redirecting my spiraled focus back to the gravity of the moment. I wasn't just standing on the brink of revelations about Hatch's death. Suddenly, the frayed edges of my own past were weaving themselves back into the present, an unfinished chapter demanding closure. What do you mean? I asked, frustration boiling within me, desperate for clarity amidst the storm that was already raging. Cam stepped forward, his eyes darting between us, scanning for vulnerability woven into the fabric of our circumstances. I know why Hatch was targeted. This isn't just about his life, it branches into something much darker, something that could entangle both you and Mark if it isn't addressed. My heart hammered against my ribcage as I glanced at Mark, whose expression mirrored the bewilderment swirling within me. You're talking about the accident? I asked, skepticism mingling with fear. What does that have to do with any of this? It's about more than just an accident, Cam said sharply, urgency weaving through his tone. Hatch had a reason to be afraid. He stumbled into a mess. Drugs, money laundering, it was all around him. And before he died, he found something that made him a target. He didn't want either of you to know, but it's why things spiraled out of control so quickly. That a sick swirl of disbelief churned in my stomach as I tried to process his words. The light I once saw in Hatch could easily have dimmed against the backdrop of such darkness. But how could he not tell me? Why wouldn't he just come to me for help? I felt my voice warbling, grappling with the reality that my friend, my ally, might have held secrets that extinguished his life, the same fire threatening to catch us all in its blaze, because he thought he could protect you both, Cam interjected, an explanation nestled deep behind his guarded composure. But that protection came at a cost. There are people looking for what he discovered, and they won't stop until they get it. The weight of his revelations crashed around me like thunder. I glanced at Mark, who looked unsteady, even as he fought to hold my gaze. If that's true, then it means we're exposed. Anyone close to Hatch could be in danger, he murmured, vulnerability tinged with an agonizing recognition of helplessness. Cam nodded, his eyes darkening. You may already be in their sights. They're not going to just let this float away. There's a trail that leads to the heart of this darkness. And they'll come looking for you unless you fight back. Fight back? I asked, uncertainty punctuated by the fluttering of my heart. In what way? That's why I'm here, he said, exhaling sharply, as though the weight of everything he was about to say hung heavy on his back. I might have a way to protect you if you're willing to stand together and confront what's coming. But it will require going deeper than you've ever been before. Are you prepared for that? The silence that followed pressed upon my shoulders with the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. My heart raced not just with fear, but with the blooming seed of determination that had taken root throughout the night. Every twist in this tale had led us to this moment, threading together the strands of our grief and loss, binding us in ways I hadn't anticipated. Looking from Cam to Mark, I felt the resolve budding beneath my scrambling heart. I don't care how dark this gets, I declared fiercely, my voice strong against the weight of uncertainty surrounding us. We need to honor Hatch's memory. If there's a truth that can uncover this web and set us free from this cycle of pain, then I want to be part of it. Mark's face softened, hope blooming amidst fear, echoing my sentiments in the depths of our tormented bond. I don't care what it takes. I want to clear my name and protect you both. Whatever it is we face, let's face it together. Cam nodded, approval mingling with urgency as he glanced around to ensure our conversation remained private. Then we have to make our move, he said, his voice adamant. But first, you need to prepare yourselves. The shadows are maneuvering closer, waiting for the moment when you're most vulnerable. I in that instant, it wasn't just about facing what was ahead, it was meeting my fears head-on, battling them with a unity I once thought was lost between us. Here, on the precipice of the unknown, fate held us together, and whatever came next, we would walk through it as a team. We'll meet again, Cam said, determination blazing within his eyes. I'll find a way to help gather responses to these unanswered questions. But remember, we're standing on shifting sands, loyalty will be tested, and sacrifices will be asked for. You must stay vigilant, no matter what. Are you all in? Yes, I reiterated, looking at Mark beside me and feeling the gravity of our connection fortifying my resolve. Whatever it takes. The bond formed in those words felt unbreakable, a tapestry woven of shared grief and renewed hope. In that moment, pieces fell into place, the rhythm of our reality sinking together as we turned toward the challenges ahead. As we began to step toward the heart of the storm, I couldn't shake the sense that fate had woven our lives tighter than before. We had opened the door to truth. Now, we would face whatever awaited us, together. There was a bright light within a heart darkened by shadows, a flicker pulsating defiantly against the encroaching storm. I tightened my grip on Mark's hand, letting the warmth chase away the chill of uncertainty. Because, no matter the darkness ahead, I knew in my heart that love could illuminate the deepest truths, bringing healing even when faced with the hardest of realities. And as we ventured forth, our hearts intertwining with resilience, I found my voice ringing out, "We're ready." The last breath of uncertainty whispered past as we stepped into the unknown, navigating this uncharted terrain, ready to confront the truth that awaited us, a truth that could either bind us closer or tear us apart. The tendrils of fate wrapped tighter around us, their grip echoing with promises of both painful revelations and hard-earned healing, because in a world riddled with shadows, standing together, we could be the light.